Dr. Nario at Biointegrative Health Center in Reno. They do a lot of really fascinating treatments, IV drips and shots and just stuff that I like for health. So today we're going to talk about childhood obesity because this is National Childhood Obesity Awareness Month. So we thought this would be a good topic. So what is that? Welcome, Doctor.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for your invite again.
So what is this childhood obesity awareness about? I mean, it's not that hard to be aware. All you got to do is look at kids these days, right? 7-year-olds. So
Yeah,
tell me a little bit about that.
well, Steve, September is National Childhood Obesity Awareness Month. It's the time when our society is tasked to protect the youth from the growing epidemic, which is actually doubling every year, unfortunately, and occasionally it signifies the changing times. And this is actually an assessment on how we are being deviated away from the lifestyle of our healthy ancestors who thrived on healthy eating. And as you can remember, none of these illnesses, diabetes, cancer, were present during the caveman era. Now, as we see this, as we get more industrialized and more food options, then the risk gets higher and higher for illness to come in. And some fun facts here, not really fun because we're going to see how depleted and how bad our situation is. According to the CDC, 1 in 6 children are obese, unfortunately. Increasing risks of obesity actually leads to more social problems such as bullying, isolation, depression, low confidence, and unfortunately, if the children are obese at this early stage, the prognosis as being adults, they're going to be obese as well.
Wow, I mean, doubling every year? I want to say I don't believe you. That's so crazy. Doubling every year.
Mhm.
Wow.
That's
So,
where the path is going. I mean, unfortunately, the future is so bright for children, but with those statistics that I said, it's not becoming that bright at all.
no, and you will probably get into all the other thing that causes. So, can you go over for us some of the common causes of, I mean, some of us we can guess, but how about if you go over some of the common causes of what's causing this in our children?
Well, Steve, as I mentioned to you, it's the growing times. Unfortunately, this is something that we have to deal with, and as part of our reality as evolving creatures. And number one, as we mentioned a while ago, bad eating habits. So we always know about fast food, the sweets. Everybody's just banking on insta food. That's why all these low quality food sources are the biggest culprits of this. But let's not point that finger only to one suspect, low physical activities. So now, isn't it during our time we run around, we enjoy playing with other children as well? What about now? Doing this, punching stuff on our iPhone, video games. These are the ones that actually contributes to low physical activity more than anything else. Another one would be, of course, genetics. Genetics will always be there. If the genetic pool of your lineage is more obese, then you definitely higher tendencies will occur on the child who has that gene. Slow metabolism, such as thyroid issues, and also, yes, immobility causes slow metabolism. Going back would be with the diet, specifically the quick and cheap access to high caloric food sources, and which are lacking in healthy nutrients and vitamins. And not only are the children the causes, but the parents as well. Busy lives as parents, or even because of the busy schedule that they have, neglect can happen intentionally or unintentionally. Hopefully, not the intentional part. And this ends up for them to be role models that are actually not being in the better view of the child. And how do they emulate things? It always comes from the values of the family around you. And talking about role models, we're going to talk about social media, TV, advertising, all our superheroes, all our TV idols. If they're the ones that we follow and things that they do are unhealthy, we will definitely follow that as children. And here's some statistics, again, numbers. Children with friends that are actually obese has a 57% chance of becoming one. And that's almost like 60%. This is the proof that the social phrase, birds of the same feather flock together. And it also is, this is a very fun fact for me. I don't know if for you, but the gut flora of your friends and your family is actually contagious for the reason that when they did a study that when you tested one person in the household and the child that was the subject, they actually were the same. So if one of the household person is has more bad bacteria than good ones, highly likely the child will also be having the same, which predisposes to higher obesity when you have more bad organisms in your gut.
Wow, that's fascinating. That is interesting. That's a very fun fact.
Right? So it's in whatever you have in your gut, it's infectious. Hopefully
Wow.
in a good way if you have the good bugs.
So, you know, we talk about, we were talking before we went live about some kids even needing liver transplants because of fatty liver. So, can you go over what some of the consequences are? Because I think, you know, human beings just live so much in the moment. Oh, so what? He's fat. You know, I'll deal with it later.
Hmm.
It's always next year. I'll lose weight next year. I'll lose weight. And then you're an adult and you're still obese. And now you're middle age and you're still obese. Oh, I'll do it next year. So I think people put it off. So can you go over some of the consequences of obesity, starting
Right,
with children and going up? What are some of the consequences? Why is this important for people to address this?
right. So the consequences of obesity is not different from somebody's an adult. And the thing here is, even now, you don't want to treat a child as an adult, but unfortunately, that's where it's coming from. So you mentioned about liver transplants. That's a problem of an adult. That should not be a problem of a child. But unfortunately, with the things that we have exposed around us, these are the sad facts and truths that we are living in. So, to be more specific, if childhood obesity actually is prolonged and unaddressed or untreated, it may lead to, and these are common also for adults, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, asthma, I'm sorry, obstructive sleep apnea because of the bigger belly that they have now, fatty liver disease, that's the one that you're pertaining to, that would lead to that failing liver of a child. And again, the one thing that everybody would miss, people think about the physical all the time, the non-physical problems that it brings to the table: low self-esteem, leading to anxiety, higher suicide rates, and even depression. All of these psychological problems are the ones now gets added to the mix of physical problems to make this conundrum of a disease very complicated to treat.
Wow. So let's say let's talk to some of the parents out there. What can parents do? We know that this is Child Obesity Awareness Month. Um, is there something out there where parents can participate? You know, if they want to say, okay, that's enough. I want to do something about this. I want to help my child who's maybe struggling with obesity. What can they do?
So Steve, the one really that I wanna, I mean, I'm not emphasizing every parent, every person in the family is very important, but mother is the link to this missing puzzle. And for mothers, the best thing that I can advise for them is really, so even during pregnancy, as early as that, things can be changed. So on studies, on medical studies, eating animal protein, especially in the third trimester during pregnancy, increases the risk of having an overweight child, especially if your child is female. So these are very, very specific things that I'm pertaining to. for the reason that if they're not cautious about the meat that they eat, the meat chemical known as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons are what we call obesogens, meaning they are promoters of fat, not only for the mother, but also for the child that's in the womb. And usually they're found in grilled or charred meats. So that's why I'm not saying mothers should not be eating meat and protein, but at this specific period of time, the third trimester, actually acts as a predictor if the child can be predisposed to obesity. And another key, breastfeeding period. So as when I was pertaining about starting early, breastfeeding actually lowers the chance of childhood obesity along with other chronic diseases that are out there, such as diabetes, asthma, heart disease. It is recommended to be done as long as possible. Only up to 2 years, not your 10-year-old. They're going to be making fun of that boy if he still breastfeeds at 10. During breastfeeding, a mother actually should be consuming various vegetables, and also this will actually predispose the growing child to eat the same. So this is the role model concept that I was talking to you about. Just also, and as we all know, we start to feed formula feeding to the children. That also should be mixed with vegetables. Again, it all boils down to the busy schedule of mother, to the point that should I give them low quality food, ready made food for my child, or should I give time and actually breastfeed? Sometimes we cut breastfeeding because I don't have to, I can't do it. I'm so busy, I'll just express it. And then of course, when you don't use it, you lose it. Then they end up in the bottle. They end up again eventually to formula. The longer the better for breastfeeding.
Hmm. That's interesting. That I'm glad you brought that up. So, because we know protein's important.
Yes.
So, what what would you advise? How to get your protein needs met during that trimester? Pea protein, or because that doesn't mean protein's probably more. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I think it's really, really important to get your protein. How would you get your protein? What are would you just make it a variety, or what would you do? How I know you've never been pregnant, but what would you recommend a pregnant woman in her third trimester? How does she get her protein?
So yeah, the protein source is really that's very. I have to emphasize during pregnancy, women has to eat protein, and if it comes to a point that they really need to eat meat, I would, because that's how the building blocks of how a child and or the organs of a child will form. And I would be very specific about being organic, being grass fed, hormone free. Those are the better choices of meat sources. I mean, not only that, there's also seafood, but focus on the seafood that actually has low heavy metals. And even for fish, fish is actually as recommended should be avoided during the first trimester for the reason that fish carries a heavy amount of heavy metals that can cause actual drastic changes in the structure of a forming fetus. And again, when we talk about the recommendations I just made a while ago, lessening, lowering down on the meats, those specific options that I gave you are quality choices that you should look for a meat if you really can't avoid. And now let's talk about the vegans. There are vegans and vegetarians who are really strict about, I'm not going to eat meat even though I'm pregnant. I would always suggest to these mothers that, hey, we need to do something. If you're not willing to really like put in meat in there, we have to give you supplementation. We have to make sure that even through your vegetables, peas, kales, you have to pack it up on the nuts. You really have to ensure that there will be high protein for that growing child. The thing there is, even for me, I would recommend for vegans and vegetarians to consider even the smallest amount of protein for their children.
How about amino acids? I know you do amino acid drips at the clinic. I mean, I would think that that would be very beneficial. Can they
Yeah.
supplement amino acids? I mean, is that kind of a decent substitute? I know pea protein, it's
Mm.
maybe not the same type of protein that you would get in fish or meat, but it's pretty good. And
Right.
what do you think about amino acids, supplementing with amino acids? Or getting out to a clinic that may be available near them and getting an amino acid drip.
Right. So that's a very good point, Steve. With amino acids, that's one of the supplements that I would recommend mothers to take. But now the caveat here, you were talking about IV, right? So the thing here is for pregnancy, one thing that we don't do are IV amino acids. It's just that, of course, for us, I know it's a very safe procedure, but it's just that when something happens to a pregnancy, and from like let's say we gave the infusion in the first trimester, and at the end of the trimester or at the pregnancy they found an abnormality, always IV is the one that people will look into as a culprit, as one of the suspects that could be a problem, that could have been cause of the problem, why it led to that. That's why, and for pregnancies, we're very limited in terms of the IV therapies that we give. I mean, we're very okay with the plain vitamins and minerals, and we always do that after the first trimester. For the reason that first trimester is always the time when organs are getting developed in the womb. After that, everything's safe, everything's okay. And for amino acids, what I would suggest for them, oral amino acids are better, just because that it can still be a supplemental add-on to the proteins that they're taking. Like, of course, as you mentioned, pea protein, yes, and sometimes organic soy protein. Organic, that's what I use, not the regular soy out there. But yeah, as a vegan or vegetarian, you have to step up the game in the protein department.
Okay, that helps. So let's get to the child obesity again and diet. What can we do? What can parents do as far as feeding their kids? I was talking to my nephew a couple nights ago, and I saying talking to him about diet and food, and he's going, "Uncle Steve, I can't afford to do that." So what what can parents do about diet, and how does it play a role with helping our kids lose that fat
Right.
or just staying healthy? What are your suggestions there?
So I agree with you. A child can only do so much unless they're a kid of Steve Jobs and they have their own money that they kept in the bank.
Yeah,
But
their own.
again, parents are the ones who are responsible for this. So let me give you specific examples on how specific we can get in preventing childhood obesity. For example, cow's milk. All right, that's a perfect example for you that when cow's milk is given to a baby calf, the calf actually grows or becomes heavier 2 pounds per day. And imagine if a human consumes these dairy products, especially skim, casein, and whey. Those are the three notorious milk products that are affiliated with this growth, this massive growth. And when you take it, you would notice that this actually produces a higher BMI and also increasing waist circumference, meaning abdominal obesity. So that's one thing that parents can bank on. Be careful with the milk that they buy, and also trying to make sure to stay away from all those the three ones that I just mentioned: skim, casein, and whey. Another one would be a common food that's on our platter all the time is chicken. Chicken has been correlated to obesity due to the hormones, again, that it contains that humans consume. And recently, another factor got added to this. They have found that a virus called Adenovirus 36 have been noted to be a contributor to obesity in children once eaten. This is an infection in chicken, and it increases the number of fat cells, and at the same time increases the absorption of fat from our guts to produce obesity even without food intake or even with low food intake. As an infection, it can be transmitted also among children. So if one child has it, if they're all in daycare, they can now pass it on. So weight gain of at least 35 pounds or more has been seen on subjects who were found to have this adenovirus 36 compared to the ones who did not have it. And again, this is a very growing study, and better understanding of this disease should be expected, especially with our current interventions. And deeper approaches should be enforced and even be educated towards the patients because of the changing of times. And as you can see, this is a disease of evolution. And our caveman ancestors, like, what are you talking about? I never had that. They were just holding a club, right? That's why we need to ensure the safety and the preservation of our future through our seeds of youth. And that's why in our clinic, we offer dietary interventions, dietary plans, fixing the gut the right way for children, and also through supplementations and giving them ample vitamins and nutrients. But it's not always the child that we teach, it's always the parents.
Well, this is a very interesting discussion. Dr. Nario at Biointegrative Health Center in Reno, Nevada. You can check them out online. I recommend that just go, just for curiosity's sake, just go check out what they do. So thank you, doctor.
All right. As we all know, again, knowledge is power, and thank you for letting me provide you with the edge in longevity and health maintenance, which I call the biological edge or the bio edge. Thank you, Steve.
All right, we'll see you all next time.